All right, how's everybody doing today? It is about 11:15 a.m. West Coast time on Tuesday, April 23rd. I'm going to do this a little differently today just because of my work schedule. I'm not going to be able to record an update later on today, so I'm going to do this one a little earlier than usual. I'm going to do this as a Hawk Droppings episode just so that everyone can hear this. Today, I'm going to talk about the contempt hearing that took place this morning, where prosecutors were trying to get Trump held in contempt for violating the court's gag order almost a dozen times. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about some context of the last week. I'll save that for the end. You guys, I think you guys will enjoy that. I got some. Okay. But anyway, so I'm recording this as a Hawk Droppings episode so everybody can hear it. I'm doing daily trial updates as Coffee with Hawk episodes, and you can find those at our website at hawkpodcasts.com. You can also find those on our YouTube page. I will ask my brother Falcon to put a link to the YouTube page in the show notes for this, and you'll be able to find that link. There's a link in my link tree on my TikTok page as well to both of those sites. So, last week, prosecutors made an oral motion in court asking that the judge hold Trump in contempt for violating the court's gag order on multiple occasions. This morning at 9:30 East Coast time was the hearing on that motion. The gag order that was previously imposed, similar to gag orders that are in place in other criminal cases, bars Trump from attacking witnesses, prosecutors, jurors, court staff, was later expanded to include some of their family members, including the judge's daughter. The gag order specifically excludes Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg and the judge Juan Merchan. Trump can say whatever he wants to about them and does on a daily basis. So even though it was an oral motion made verbally in open court, a contempt motion can be a big deal because it can carry, quasi criminal sanctions along with it, fines and jail time. You can get put in jail once you are held in contempt. Now, initially at court this morning, prosecutors and defense counsel went back into judges' chambers. I believe that's because Trump violated the gag order 2 more times yesterday. He went after Michael Cohen yesterday. And then last night he was on one of those right-wing TV networks that nobody's ever heard of. And he went after the jurors. He's like, they're 95% Democrats. And he went after the jurors, which both of those are specifically barred by the court's gag order. And this gag order does not implicate Donald Trump's First Amendment speech rights in any way, shape, or form. He is a criminal defendant. Criminal defendants who are on trial by law have curtailed speech rights while the trial is going on in order to protect the integrity of the trial and the court process. That's just reality, and that's been upheld by courts for forever. So when you hear Trump and his supporters screaming about First Amendment free speech rights, they don't have any idea what they're talking about, and they've never read any case law. So the prosecutor who argued this for the prosecution, obviously, was a guy named Chris Conroy. And he started out in detailing there were 10 posts before yesterday that the prosecution says violated the court's gag order. Let me see, 8 posts on Truth Social and 2 were posted to his official campaign website. But then yesterday he went after Michael Cohen, and then last night he went after the jury. So Conroy, the prosecutor, said that these types of activities, these types of posts in this language, it poses a very real threat to the proceedings, and it creates an undertow effect on witnesses and jurors and makes them afraid. It makes them afraid to participate. It makes witnesses afraid to come in and testify fully, openly, and honestly in open court on the record. And because of Donald Trump's track record and the track record of his supporters, the prosecutor's like, these people are right to be afraid of this guy and his supporters, and that's why it needs to be put to a stop. But it was. So there's a similarity here to what we saw recently in the last E. Jean Carroll trial. In the E. Jean Carroll trial, her attorney, Robbie Kaplan, when she was asking the jury for an award of punitive damages, make it enough money that he will stop attacking her, make it enough money that he will stop defaming her. And similarly, today, Conroy, the prosecutor, is like, we're not asking for jail time right now, even though we could. But we're asking the court to impose enough of a sanction so that he will stop doing this and warn him, put him specifically on notice that if he does continue to do this, then he is going to go to jail. So that's what they asked for. And I thought that was pretty tight. That was pretty good. Conroy walked the judge through the history of, the issuance of the gag order, what led up to that, what has happened since then. He reminded the judge that Trump went after the judge's daughter, which I'm sure the judge didn't need to be reminded of that. But it's important to make that part of the record. He's trying to anticipate some of the arguments of defense, because two of Trump's main defenses along these lines are, it's like, he reposts things that are originally posted by other people. And he was like, well, all I did is repost it. I didn't create it, as though that matters. I don't think it does. You're posting it, whether you created it or not. If it violates the gag order, it violates the gag order for you to repost it. And then he has said, this is all political speech. It's all political speech, and political speech is protected. You cannot curtail my political speech. And so I want you guys to be aware of those two defenses now as I start going through what the prosecutor did, because the prosecutor tried to address some of those things as he was making his argument to the judge. We'll get to it. And this is a whole other deal. Stormy Daniels' disgraced attorney, Michael Avenatti, who's serving like 14 years in prison for defrauding his clients, including Stormy Daniels, has come out on Trump's side, even though he's in prison. He's been given phone interviews to like Fox News and OAN and Newsmax, saying that he would go in and testify on behalf of Donald Trump, which an attorney who is in prison because he defrauded the client in question, saying that he would go into court and testify against that former client. Attorney-client privilege belongs to the client. So he won't be permitted to do that. But it's just crazy, and then that spurred this whole series of attacks that Donald Trump engaged in on Truth Social against Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, who is a party and a witness. Conroy ticks through all of these violations, and then we get to what Jesse Waters did on Fox News last week, on Tuesday night, a week ago, when we were still in the jury selection process. Juror number 2 had been seated. She was a woman. She's a nurse. And in the course of the voir dire process, the jury questioning process, a lot of her personal information was disclosed. Like, what neighborhood do you live in? Are you married? What do you do for a living? What's your husband do for a living? And Jesse Waters on Fox News went after her hard on his program that night, because she said, I don't have a strong opinion on Trump. And I think more importantly, she said, no one is above the law. And he was like, I don't know about juror number 2. because she said no one is above the law. And so he reported repeatedly throughout last Tuesday evening live on Fox News enough of her biographical information that she started getting text messages and phone calls from friends and relatives like, hey, is this you? And so she went back into court Wednesday morning and said, I fear for my safety. My personal identifying information is going to be disclosed, and these people are going to know how to find me, and they're going to know my name and where I live. And she was excused from the jury. That was extremely upsetting to the judge in this case, Judge Mershon, who thanked her and excused her. And as she was leaving, he said, this is too bad. He's like, I think you would have been a very good juror on this case. And the judge, when Conroy was like, we ended up losing a jury because of this kind of shit. And he said, what happened here was exactly what this order was meant to prevent. And the defendant, Donald Trump, doesn't care. Conroy was talking about Trump seeking to use politics as a defense, saying it makes no sense, eviscerating the clear language and meaning of the gag order. There's no indication that his claim that he's responding to attacks is anything more than an after-the-fact justification. He knows about the order. He knows what he's allowed to do, and he does it anyway. He knows what he's not allowed to do, and he does it anyway. It is willful and intentional every time he breaches the terms of this gag order. And I think that's clear. That's plain as day. And Conroy said, just adding MAGA or some campaign slogan to the end of these posts doesn't automatically make them political speech that's protected. It may actually make it more ominous and threatening because he's invoking his little MAGA chud Gomer army. Conroy said that Trump violates the order when he posts about known witnesses or reasonably foreseeable witnesses, and he violates the order when he posts about a juror or prospective jurors. Then Conroy came back around to Trump's defense that reposts aren't his own words, and that points out that Trump has been using this version of a defense politically since as long as he's been campaigning, going back to 2015, 2016. And he starts wrapping up by saying he's doing nothing less than knowingly and willfully, that is intentionally, breaching the crystal clear, unequivocal lines set by this court. And Conroy says, we're not asking for jail time now, even though Trump seems to be angling for that and essentially daring the court to do that. So while Trump has made a show of daring prosecutors, there are a few... nobody in Trump's orbit really honestly believes that Donald Trump wants to spend a week or a month or a weekend in Rikers. Nobody actually believes that. Donald Trump would wilt and cry and scream like a little baby, even more so than he's doing in open court. Which reminds me again, it's like when court first started this morning, when the judge and both sets of attorneys went back in the judge's chambers to talk about adding some additional occurrences of violating the order to today's proceedings. Again, it's like you had prosecution table, you had the defense table, and the only person sitting at either one of those tables was Donald Trump, and he was sitting there by himself. None of his family is in the courtroom. His wife's not in the courtroom. None of his supporters are in the courtroom. He was sitting there alone. And my God, can somebody please get a photograph of that, please? I need to start making new merch. So then it's defense counsel's turn. It's his defense attorney, Todd Blanche, gets up and just basically repeated his opening statement from yesterday. There's no willful violation. There's nothing to see here. Donald Trump's not doing anything intentional. And anyway, all of this is protected political speech when it comes to Trump because he's running for president and he's the presumptive nominee of one of our country's two major political parties. Basically saying that because Donald Trump is a presidential nominee, it's not possible for him to violate this gag order because everything that comes out of his mouth is protected political speech, regardless of what that is. you can imagine how well that argument went over with the judge. And, again, it's like he started to go through some of the specific things that Prosecutor Conroy had listed, with his attacks on Michael Cohen and his attacks on Stormy Daniels. Todd Blanche, kind of sought to spin those and repaint those as Donald Trump responding to a barrage of political attacks that were being made against him, which is stupid. And Mershon was like, I'm not getting into interpreting and reading between the lines. But, Blanche continued to push the argument that everything that Donald Trump says is political and therefore it's protected, it's just dumb. Blanche is struggling to make his argument because he's being continually interrupted by the judge. What does that mean? Well, the judge didn't continually interrupt Prosecutor Conroy. He asked Conroy several questions, and then Conroy answered those questions. Everything that Conroy did was done in good faith, and he had evidence to support it. Todd Blanche, on the other hand, is being disingenuous in saying that X is not X, it's actually Y, and, don't believe your lying eyes. He's tap dancing all over the inside of this courtroom, trying to spin and reframe this stuff in ways that are disingenuous. He's trying to keep his client out of a jail cell, frankly. And, again, it's like Blanche is saying Trump's response is not, in fact, an attack on witnesses, but a continuation of a political discussion and responding to political attacks. The legal and political strategies by the Trump team have been intertwined since the first indictment, and Blanche's argument brings that into stark relief. Okay. So Judge Mershon he's interrupting him. He's interrupting Todd Blanche, saying, "Slow down. I want to go through these one by one." And one area that Judge Mershon hit was Donald Trump constantly posts these things that are like, "Oh my God, look what we just found." And then it's some, miraculous piece of exonerating evidence that disproves everything about everything and proves that he's innocent. When in fact, it's not something that's brand new. It's not something that's exonerating, and it's something that people have known about for 5 years. And he did that recently on April 10th. He was like, "My God, look what I just found." And he was holding this note from Stormy Daniels denying that she ever had an affair with Donald Trump or that she ever slept with Donald Trump, which she later said she signed under duress. But Donald Trump was like, "This totally exonerates me. I'm totally innocent. This case should never have been brought, yada, 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 blah, 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 blah." And the judge was like, "Look, he posts this shit all the time. I need to know what's actually true. I need to know what's factual and what's correct." And then there were a few times while the judge was speaking and Todd Blanche interrupted the judge, which you never, ever do as a trial attorney, and was trying to kind of spin the judge a little bit. And the judge lost patience with Trump's attorney and said, "I'm asking the questions, okay? I'm going to decide whether your client is in contempt or not, so please don't try to turn this around." And Todd Blanche again did something you never do. He's like, "Well, the prosecution got as much time as they wanted." And the judge was like, "The prosecution answered questions that I asked them. That's why they got as much time as they got, because I was asking them questions. Now I'm asking you questions. If you would like to answer those questions, that would be fantastic. If you want to be a petulant little dickhead and not answer those questions, well, that's your choice too." Donald Trump got very upset when his attorney was being scolded by the judge and did not enjoy that. That was not enjoyable for him. And then this was great. Todd Blanche went on to say that Donald Trump is completely entitled to complain about a two-tiered justice system. And the judge, again, "Mr. Blanche, There's two systems of justice in this courtroom. That's what you're saying? Good luck answering that one, sport. To the judge's face. I mean, again, it was a total rehash of his opening statement. It's like Donald Trump did nothing wrong. He's running for president. Everything he says is political. Everything is protected speech, and you can't hold him accountable for anything because he's running for president, which is a dumb and stupid argument. And so then Judge Merchan got into this whole reposts thing. Just because I repost something, it's like a repost is not an endorsement. That's the whole Twitter thing. Just because I repost something doesn't mean I agree with it or endorse it, which is I always found kind of silly. And the judge was like, you guys keep pushing this narrative that reposts don't count if they violate the gag order. He's like, reposts aren't passive. They don't happen by accident. So I need you to walk me through the steps by which Donald Trump reposts something on Truth Social. And Todd Blanche had to do that. And, it's interesting that, like there have been so many times throughout this whole process where Donald Trump has used others to do his dirty work for him, whether it's Michael Cohen or the National Enquirer. And, but he can't really do that on Truth Social and let people know that, because if something's posted to his account, people assume it's him. And so when he reposts something, or when he tells one of his aides to repost something or post something, in his words, it's attributable to him because it's his personal Truth Social account. And so that was interesting. The judge was not buying at all the whole reposts don't count argument. And he clearly was not buying the whole all of this is political speech argument as well. I mean, Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche, had a bad day in court today. He had a really bad day. And I haven't even gotten to the worst of it yet. And so, the judge was repeatedly pushing Todd Blanche to clarify his arguments and to address the questions that the court was asking him. And, only to have Blanche deny that he is saying what he seems to be saying. Trump is very lucky that the jurors are not here for this. This took place outside the presence of the jurors. And the judge started to get very frustrated and just started scolding him and kind of dressing him down. At one point, the judge looked at Todd Blanche and said, "You've presented nothing to me." After Todd Blanche had already been speaking for 20 minutes, the judge was like, "You've presented nothing to me that's helpful in any way, shape, or form." That is devastating. That is absolutely devastating. Trump was sitting at counsel table, getting cranky. He was getting animated. He didn't appreciate the way the judge was talking to his attorney, and Judge Merchan flipped back around to that Jesse Waters stuff and said, your client did not repost a quote from Jesse Waters. He typed it out in quotes, added words to it, manipulated the language, and posted it as a direct quote when it was not a direct quote. Your client had manipulated that quote, clearly in violation of the gag order. And Blanche was like, "Well, yeah, that's not a true repost." But then he kept saying, Todd Blanche kept saying over and over again about, how hard his client is trying to comply with the gag order. That, I mean, Trump came out of court today and railed against the gag order, said it's unconstitutional, said all these people can say whatever they want to about me and I can't defend myself. I can't say anything. That's not trying to comply with a gag order. It just isn't. Coming out of court yesterday and attacking Michael Cohen is not trying to comply with the gag order. Going on a network show last night and going after the jury is not trying to comply with the gag order. Todd Blanche is like, "We're really trying to comply with this gag order, Your Honor." At which point came the low point for Todd Blanche today. The trial judge, during the first week of trial where we're hearing witnesses, looked at Donald Trump's lead counsel and said, "You are losing all credibility with this court." That is a death sentence for a trial attorney. During the first week of witnesses, the trial judge looks at you and said, "You're losing all credibility with this court." As a trial attorney, your credibility with the court and your credibility with the jury are the only things that you have. Period. That's it. That's all you've got. If you lose your credibility with the court during the second week of a 6 or 7 week long trial, you're done. You're done. You're just done. And your client's the one who's going to pay the price for that. It was just, that is a soul crushing comment to come from the bench, man. This is going to be a long trial. We've got over a month left, and Trump's lead counsel has already poisoned his relationship with the judge. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And, the judge kind of calmed down a little bit, but again, was basically begging Todd Blanche to make more substantive arguments to back up the ideas that reposts should not be subject to the gag order. He's like, "I hate to keep coming back to this, but you're not offering me anything to support your argument. You're not offering me anything that I can rely upon if I want to side with you on this," which I don't think he does. I don't think the judge wants to side with him at all. So that basically wrapped up the hearing, but Prosecutor Conroy wanted to respond briefly. And he responded briefly to a couple of specific points. The judge clarified that politics infuses everything that Trump does, but insisted on hearing good faith arguments and the truth wherever possible. And he did not get that. He did not get that from Todd Blanche. And so I think today's hearing ended up being much more revealing than anyone had expected. Trump walked out of the courtroom after the hearing was over. He was cranky. He was irritated. He was upset. Todd Blanche was upset. He walked over to the defense table and stood there and just rubbed his face. That's never a good sign. And while they were on break in between the hearing and David Pecker coming back to the witness stand, while on break, Trump complained about the gag order on Truth Social. In an all caps post, he accused Judge Merchan of taking away his right to free speech, claimed he was not allowed to defend himself. He's a potato, man. He is a petulant, angry, aggrieved little potato. It's just ridiculous. And so during the break, reporters out in the hallway were screaming questions at him like, "Hey, not a good day for your lawyer, huh? Your attorney's really tanked on that hearing, right? What do you think of that?" He didn't respond to any of those questions. Then they came back from break, and David Pecker got back up on the stand for day 2 of his testimony. So a bad day, a bad start to the day. And from what I can tell from David Pecker's testimony, he is completely corroborating everything that Michael Cohen has had to say, and again has documents to back it up. So it's like the prosecution is obviously going to go hard after Michael Cohen. They're going to absolutely eviscerate him as a witness because he is a convicted felon. He has lied in the past. He has perjured himself in the past. He has committed crimes on behalf of Donald Trump. There's a lot for them to work with. And he won't shut up. He won't stay off social media. He won't stay off cable news shows. And when he's on those mediums, he constantly talks about what a piece of shit Donald Trump is and how badly he wants Donald Trump to go to prison. That stuff doesn't help your credibility with the jury. It just doesn't. It makes you look like you have a motive to lie. It just does. And so Michael Cohen has not been doing the prosecution any favors over the pendency of this case. Not one bit. So let's look at this in context of what happened last week in Congress. For the last, 15 months, The Freedom Caucus has been running the show. They have had a death grip on the House of Representatives because Republican leadership was terrified of them. We saw what they did to Kevin McCarthy. He did 2 funding deals with Democrats. Nothing really that bad. And they threw him out. We had 3 weeks with no speaker. During that period of time, Jim Jordan was one of the nominees. And people who said they weren't going to vote for Jim Jordan started getting death threats from their colleagues in Congress. Yeah, these people are insane. So they finally settle on Mike Johnson, and more Ukraine aid was needed. And Mike Johnson kept putting it off because Donald Trump didn't want it, because he is a Russian asset. And the Freedom Caucus didn't want it because they are all Russian assets. But the rest of the Republicans lived in fear of them, lived in total fear of them. Then he did pass a couple of things with Democrats' help, and Marjorie Taylor Greene filed a motion to vacate the chair, didn't set it for a hearing yet, but threatened to throw him out of Congress too, throw him out of the speakership. And so he was stuck because he believes in the Ukrainian cause. He believes in freedom. He believes that Russia is the bad guys. He believes that Vladimir Putin is the bad guy, regardless of what so many other people in his party and what Donald Trump think. Mike Johnson is on the right side of that one single issue. It's about the only issue that he's on the right side of, but he's on the right side of that issue. He's also on the right side of wanting to have a functional House of Representatives, and he wants to be an effective Speaker of the House, as anybody would. And so when he brought those 3 funding bills and another bill to the floor of the House last Saturday, and in the couple days leading up to that, had said, I don't care if this costs me my speakership. These are the right things to do, and we're going to do them. That told me that he had made a deal with Hakeem Jeffries and Democrats, because in saying those things and bringing those bills to the floor, he knew that he was not going to be thrown out of the speakership. And the only way that he could know that he was not going to be thrown out of the speakership is if he had made a deal with Hakeem Jeffries and Democrats, which I'm sure we'll learn more about this over the coming months, but would require him to make certain concessions to Democrats about legislation that they care about. We'll learn more about that as it comes. But he clearly was in a position where he feels very, very comfortable that his speakership is, in fact, not at all threatened by Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gates, Paul Gosar, Lauren Boebert, these blowhard dipshits who have 2 brain cells to rub together. And so he knows they're not a threat to him now. And who else is on board with that? All the moderate Republicans who want a functioning House of Representatives as well. They hate the Freedom Caucus people. The Freedom Caucus, they get painted with the Freedom Caucus people all the time. They get blamed and held as the same as Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert. Imagine going to Congress and wanting to do a serious job on serious things, and every single day you're equated with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz. That would be awful. That would be absolutely awful. Moderate Republicans hate the Freedom Caucus more than Democrats do, because they get painted with the bullshit that the Freedom Caucus does. So I'm sure Mike Johnson worked with them as well in putting together this legislation that passed overwhelmingly on Saturday, overwhelming bipartisan numbers. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is still threatening to remove him from his speakership. She does not have the votes to do it now. And that's why she has not filed for a hearing date or for a vote date on that motion, because she knows she's going to lose. And so essentially over the last week, moderate Republicans in the House, Mike Johnson, and Democrats teamed up together to tell the Freedom Caucus and Donald Trump to fuck off on these pieces of legislation. And they have effectively carved out and pushed to the side the Freedom Caucus for the rest of this congressional term through the end of the year. We're going to hear these people yell and scream, but Mike Johnson worked out a deal. He made them irrelevant for the next 8 months. He made them irrelevant, much to the delight of moderate Republicans and obviously House Democrats as well. They can get to work now. They can get to work and they can pass things that are going to matter, because Mike Johnson also doesn't want to lose control of the House in the upcoming election this fall. He understands that the only chance that he has, the only shot that he has to keep Republican majority in the House is to actually do some things. And he can't do that with the Freedom Caucus. That's one thing. Second, the donor class, the investor class, the 1%, they are fucking sick to death of Donald Trump. They want to close the door on him so bad. They want to close the door on Donald Trump so bad, because it turns out autocracy is not great for the marketplace. They don't want white Christian nationalism, autocracy, theocracy any more than anybody else does, because it's bad for their bottom line, because they're greedy. So I'm sure behind the scenes, they've been talking with their money as well. And because I wouldn't be surprised to see Speaker Johnson's fundraising numbers increase dramatically over the next couple of months, because he did this to the Freedom Caucus. And because he did what he did for the benefit of Ukraine against Russia. It's been a great 8 or 9 days, man. It's been fantastic. All right, so that's going to wrap up this episode. Again, please go check out our other episodes that we have available each week at hawkpodcasts.com, as well as on our YouTube page. We put them all up on there as well. And as always, go check out hawkmerchstore.com. You can get your Full Potato Friday and Cletus merch there. So, but it's almost noon on Tuesday. I'm booked for the rest of the day. I'm finishing up moving on Friday, so I'm going to be checking in when I can, but I'm probably going to be trying to get up and record stuff early in the morning. I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to record updates for the next 2 or 3 days, but I will do them as often as I humanly can. As always, huge thanks to my brother Falcon, without whom none of this would be possible, our buddy Wiseacre, and my brother from another mother, my buddy Anu, for letting us use his music. And it's noon on Tuesday, man. The whole week is still ahead of you. Get out there, have a great week, be safe, don't take any shit. See you soon.